I've always found it unsettling how easily we can dismiss warnings, especially when they clash with our own sense of security. Lisa Hartwell, a jogger in Colorado, was confident in her neighborhood's safety. She'd heard the wildlife warnings about increased mountain lion activity, but dismissed them just before a fatal encounter. It's a chilling reminder that nature doesn't always respect our boundaries. It was October 7th, 2016. The affluent Boulder, Colorado neighborhood of Wildwood Heights was still quiet in the early morning darkness. This upscale residential area, built just 5 years earlier on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills, had winding streets lined with modern homes. They backed up against natural open space and wildlife corridors. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator for a local tech company, was beginning her daily 5 a.m. jogging routine through the neighborhood's carefully planned streets and cul-de-sacs. Lisa had moved to Wildwood Heights 2 years earlier. She was drawn by the community's promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. A dedicated fitness enthusiast, she maintained a strict exercise schedule despite her demanding career, often rising before dawn to complete her 5-mile run before heading to the office. Lisa's morning routine had become sacred to her, a peaceful time when she could clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and stunning views. The neighborhood had been experiencing an unusually dry autumn. Drought conditions extended well into what should have been the wet season. Local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of water sources. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks found in backyards and a large cat spotted near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard about the wildlife warnings but dismissed them as typical Colorado mountain living concerns. She continued her early morning runs without altering her route or carrying any deterrents, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wild cat species. Adult males weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters that rely on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert that ran beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the carefully planned hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street and disappeared into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack came without warning as Lisa passed within 10 feet of the drainage culvert. The 140-pound mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance between them in a single powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt street while his weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck. His 4-inch canine teeth punctured through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert, where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine, with the mountain lion's killing bite proving instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. It was August 19, 2017, when Felicity Grant arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado, a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. This mountainous region stretched across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails that attracted outdoor enthusiasts. However, these same wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. I've often found that the most tragic stories are the ones fueled by arrogance and a disregard for the warnings of others. Take the case of Felicity, a self-proclaimed elite athlete who met a gruesome end on Rabbit Ears Pass Trail. Her story, a stark reminder of nature's indifference to human hubris, stays with me. Fellow hiker Maria Santos had tried to warn Felicity about the dangers of solo hiking during dawn hours. But Felicity, in her arrogance, dismissed Maria as a jealous local trying to sabotage a successful influencer. She had deliberately ignored trail close signs, claiming they didn't apply to elite athletes like herself, even tearing down warning notices, believing taxpayers like her had every right to use public trails. Mountain lions, you see, are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. Adult males can weigh up to 180 pounds and mie over 8 feet long, possessing powerful hind legs capable of propelling them up to 40 feet in a single leap. Their retractable claws, up to 4 inches long, are designed for gripping prey, and their 4-inch canine teeth are perfectly positioned for delivering fatal neck bites that sever the spinal cord. Felicity began her solo trail run at 5:30 a.m., choosing the pre-dawn hours to avoid what she called inferior hikers. She wore noise-canceling headphones, blasting loud electronic music, and carried a backpack containing raw steaks for her post-workout protein meal. It was a deadly combination. A 140-pound male mountain lion had been actively hunting in the area, establishing a territory that included the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail. The scent of fresh meat traveled over a mile, drawing the predator's attention. The cougar began stalking Felicity along the ridge, using rocks and trees for cover, closing the distance with incredible stealth. As Felicity rounded a sharp bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a large boulder about 15 feet above the path. Oblivious to the danger because of her loud music and arrogant belief in her invulnerability, she passed directly beneath the boulder. The mountain lion launched itself in a devastating aerial attack, striking Felicity from behind with tremendous force. His claws raked down her back as his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. His 4-inch canine teeth found their mark, clamping down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision. The mountain lion's jaws applied crushing press, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into her neck muscles, fracturing the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis from the neck down. Within 2 minutes, Felicity was dead, the result of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion then dragged her body off the main trail to feed undisturbed. Felicity's remains were discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team. Then there's the story of Jennifer Walsh. It was December 3rd, 2014, and fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across rows of kennels at the county animal shelter. Jennifer, a 25-year-old veterinary student, believed every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, she gravitated toward the shelter's most difficult cases, the animals marked with red cards scheduled for immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, deemed too dangerous for adoption. Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, searching for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She'd seen him pace, growl, and destroy toys, but she'd also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability. Moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. Shelter protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. But Jennifer, convinced that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, believed he needed one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy, Jennifer made a decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel, "There's a story that haunts me, a stark reminder that good intentions can't replace experience when dealing with the wild. It's the story of Jennifer, a young woman whose dream of becoming a veterinarian ended in a locked isolation room, a dream extinguished by the very animals she hoped to save. She violated protocol, ignored warning signs, and paid the ultimate price. I remember reading the investigation report, the clinical language barely masking the horror of those final moments. Jennifer had been tasked with evaluating a dog named Diesel, a 75-pound canine whose body language screamed danger. His lips were pulled back, revealing yellowed teeth, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. But Jennifer, perhaps seeing fear where there was only calculation, interpreted these signs as something other than aggression. When she opened Diesel's kennel, his demeanor shifted, and he seemed to assess her position. This hesitation gave her a false sense of confidence. She slipped a lead around his neck and guided him toward the isolation room. Once inside the small, bare concrete space, only 8 by 10 feet, she removed the lead, believing freedom would help him relax. For several minutes, Diesel stood rigid, his eyes fixed on Jennifer. She sat in a metal folding chair and began speaking to him in a gentle, encouraging voice, completely unaware that she was being evaluated by a predator. The attack came suddenly when Jennifer stood and took a step toward Diesel, her hand extended in what she intended as a peaceful gesture. But to Diesel, the movement was a threat. He launched across the room with explosive force, his jaws targeting Jennifer's throat with deadly precision. Her scream was cut short as Diesel's teeth sank deep into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single bite. His jaws locked, his powerful neck muscles shaking her violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles weakened. Other volunteers, hearing her initial scream, rushed to the isolation room, but the heavy door was locked from the inside. By the time they got the key and entered, Jennifer lay motionless on the floor, her life ebbing away in a pool of blood. Diesel stood over her body, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with aggression. Paramedics arrived quickly, but it was too late. Jennifer was pronounced dead at the scene. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized. The shelter implemented new security measures, including electronic locks and mandatory buddy systems. Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale, a reminder that good intentions and academic knowledge are no substitute for experience and proper safety protocols. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but with a quiet, heartbreaking request that it go to students studying wildlife conservation rather than domestic animal care. A final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. It's a lesson that echoes in another tragedy, one that unfolded on April 17, 2018, under the humid Florida air at the Sunshine Primate Sanctuary. This was a controversial facility, one that claimed to rescue primates while exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never permit. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, visited the facility with her husband, believing it was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, documenting animal care and recovery through photography. Her genuine love for animals had driven her to pursue her veterinary technology degree, working nights to support herself through school. She volunteered at legitimate sanctuaries and supported organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. She genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility marketed as an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's minimal safety means consisted of a chain-link barrier separating visitors from the gorilla's enclave, with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth. Adult males can weigh up to 400 pounds and possess the strength of 10 grown men. They are intelligent and emotionally complex, but also territorial, and can become extremely aggressive when they perceive threats. I've seen firsthand how quickly a seemingly calm animal can turn. It's a chilling reminder that we often misinterpret their behavior, projecting our own desires onto them. I remember reading the story of Jessica, a conservationist, who learned this lesson in the most tragic way imaginable. Jessica wanted to capture images that conveyed a gorilla's intelligence and emotional depth. She saw King, a 350-pound silverback, sitting calmly near the fence of his enclave. She thought she understood him, but her attempt to touch King through the fence proved fatal. His reaction was instantaneous. He grabbed her arm with crushing strength, pulling her against the chain-link fencing. Her screams filled the air as his grip tightened, inflicting devastating trauma to her head, neck, and arms. Her attempts to break free only seemed to escalate his aggression. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased. The investigation revealed that the sanctuary was an illegal roadside zoo with inadequate safety means. King was eventually transferred to an accredited facility. Jessica's death led to enhanced regulations for animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of wildlife protection laws. It makes you think about how easily things can go wrong. Take, for example, what happened on March 18, 2017, in an upscale neighborhood of Asheville, North Carolina. It was the first warm evening of spring in Mountain View Estates, a residential development nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds. She cared for the pets of wealthy residents, a job she'd been doing for 3 years. She walked up to 6 dogs at a time, managing them with care. Her income helped support her teenage daughter alongside her day job at a local veterinary clinic. The development had been built in pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve trees and maintain wildlife corridors. But recent construction had disrupted animal movement, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity, especially as animals emerged from hibernation. Maria knew of the warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals. She carried pepper spray and had received training on wildlife encounters. On that particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German shepherds and a golden retriever, when she noticed something unusual near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are common in North America, with adult females weighing between 200 and 400 pounds, and mother bears with cubs are extremely protective. I've seen what bears are capable of. They have an excellent sense of smell, and they're drawn to where we live by our garbage, our pet food, all the things we leave out. And when they're surprised or cornered, they can run incredibly fast. They have the strength to break down doors, to overturn cars. I know their claws and teeth can inflict devastating injuries, especially if they feel their cubs or territory are threatened. I read about a woman named Maria. She was walking her dogs when she came to an intersection where garbage cans had been placed for pickup. There she saw a 300-pound black bear with 2 small cubs rummaging through the containers. The mother bear had torn open bags and was feeding, her cubs playing nearby. Maria knew the danger immediately, and she started to back away, slowly. But the 3 dogs she was walking became agitated and started barking aggressively at the bears. That triggered the mother bear's protective instincts. She saw the barking dogs as a direct threat to her cubs. She rose to her full height, making aggressive noises, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to control the excited dogs and retreat, but their barking and lunging only made things worse. The mother bear charged, covering the distance between them in just seconds. Maria tried to run while holding 3 leashes, but she got tangled and fell hard onto the street. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable as the enraged bear approached. The bear's paws struck Maria's back and shoulders with bone-crushing force, driving her face into the pavement, her weight pinning Maria to the ground. The bear's jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck, teeth puncturing bone. Maria's attempts to protect herself were useless against an animal so much stronger. The bear's claws raked across Maria's torso and limbs, each swipe opening deep gashes. The attack was brutal, driven by the instinct to eliminate any threat to her cubs. Maria's struggles weakened as trauma and blood loss overwhelmed her. Neighbors heard the commotion and called for help, trying to scare the bear away with loud noises and lights. Eventually, the mother bear retreated with her cubs toward the forest, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived quickly, but they couldn't save her. She had died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation found that improperly secured garbage had attracted the bear and her cubs, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials determined the bear was acting defensively, protecting her offspring, not exhibiting abnormal aggression. The mother bear and cubs were relocated to a remote mountain area. Maria's death led to immediate changes, including bear-proof garbage containers and new guidelines for refuge. The community also implemented an early warning system for wildlife sightings and required residents to remove potential attractants from their properties. Then there's the story of Rebecca Martinez on October 15, 2016. The Georgia sun was setting over her property, casting shadows across a maze of kennels. The barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. At 34, she'd spent years building her sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't. the aggressive ones, the biters, the ones marked for euthanasia. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company on her remote property. Neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property, moving between enclos with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed she'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but she dismissed his concerns. The local vet had stopped making house calls after one of the dogs lunged at him through a fence, requiring stitches. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate, not approaching the main compound. The main enclos housed her three largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix with a history of abuse; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed whose face told the story of his fighting past. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these three had been forming an alliance, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs had been there for anyone trained to recognize them. The three dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca was exhausted and emotionally invested in seeing progress. I've always been drawn to stories where the familiar turns menacing, where the line between savior and prey blurs in an instant. I remember reading about Rebecca, a dedicated rescuer, and the pack of dogs she cared for. It was a grim reminder that even the most profound connections can shatter under the weight of instinct. Her story still haunts me. Rebecca's days were filled with the clamoring of dogs, a symphony of barks and whines that echoed across her isolated property. She had saved these animals, offering them refuge where none existed, but she missed a crucial signal. As evening fell, she began her daily feeding routine, the most dangerous part of her day. The metallic clanging as she filled the bucket sent the dogs into a frenzy. The ground was slick from a recent thunderstorm as she approached the main enclos, buckets heavy in her hands. Three large dogs pressed against the fence, their eyes locked on the food, muscles coiled with anticipation. She'd done this thousands of times, but this night felt different. The air felt heavy, charged with something more than just humidity. As Rebecca unlatched the gate and stepped inside, her boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, losing her balance, the buckets crashing to the earth, scattering kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to get back on her feet, something shifted in his eyes. She was no longer the woman who had saved him, but competition. The attack was sudden and brutal. Rex, all 90 pounds of him, slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh. Her scream cut through the evening air, but there was no one to hear it for miles. Within seconds, Titan and Scar joined the assault, their pack instincts overwhelming any rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, sinking his teeth into her legs, dragging her away from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground, mingling with their growls and Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted almost 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, her body remained undiscovered on the isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations, leading to new regulations requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew her, the rules came far too late. Then there's the story of Camille Morel, a fitness instructor from Versailles. On April 3, 2017, inside the Thorzou Safari Park in France, something stirred that would break the tranquility of the area forever. Camille, known for her precision and self-discipline, decided to spend a weekend at the park, seeking an overnight wilderness immersion close to Paris. She'd visited before and remembered the peace of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked a chalet not just for rest, but also to maintain her running routine in the open air. The park's trails and guest roads were considered safe during visiting hours, and Camille had read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector adjacent to the bison range, a layout designed to minimize stress and liability. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were ASD. The viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her plan that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, just like at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange blend of natural calm and controlled wilderness, with pine trees, sandy trails, and an artificial stream. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light can flatten contrast. Beyond the chalet stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory covered nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 pounds and run up to 35 miles per hour for short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans occur only when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock. One of the workers, receiving a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, left under maintenance override without confirming the gate was secure. The gate's interlock, meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, was not. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted signs. I can't forget the image of the wolves emerging from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. I've read so many reports, examined so many photos, but that single detail always stays with me. Camille, the jogger, wasn't immediately panicked. She'd seen the wolves behind fences before, and I imagine she thought the barrier must be nearby. But when they began advancing in that slow, deliberate arc, something shifted. She froze. She turned and saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her. She started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She broke into a sprint, paws thudding against the dirt. The zookeeper, watching from above, saw her glance back once. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell, hitting hard. Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream, the report said, carried across the enclosure, high and ragged. The zookeeper sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted around the inner fence lines, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within normal range, they said, for a keeper-initiated emergency call. 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. The rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. 1 ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. The autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort to Versailles. That afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thari Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclos audit were conducted. Thari Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016, and the scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Cat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclos that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cat sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of three sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I've spent countless hours poring over accounts of human wildlife encounters, but some details still shock me. The case of Ashley, for instance. She saw Caesar, a 400-pound African lion, at a sanctuary, and she saw an opportunity for the ultimate photo. She whispered her plan to her friend Jake, asking him to distract the sanctuary owner while she climbed over the barrier for a close-up selfie with Caesar. While Jake kept the owner busy, Ashley quietly approached Caesar's enclosure and climbed over the 4-foot chain-link barrier. The massive lion was resting about 10 feet away, his golden eyes following her but showing no immediate aggression. Ashley crouched down and held out her phone, trying to capture both herself and Caesar in the frame. That's when Caesar's demeanor subtly shifted. His ears flattened slightly against his massive head, and his tail began twitching faster. The attack, when it came, was explosively sudden. It was as if millions of years of evolutionary programming kicked in the moment Ashley moved to adjust her pose. He recognized her as prey within his territory. The 400-pound lion launched himself at her with devastating speed, covering the distance in a single bound. Ashley's phone flew from her hand as Caesar's massive paws struck her chest, driving her backward onto the ground. His razor-sharp claws dug into her torso and shoulders. The lion's powerful jaws clamped down on Ashley's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. Driven by territorial instincts, Caesar continued his assault, claws raking across her body, his bite maintaining its grip on her throat. Ashley's movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelmed her. Jake's screams brought the sanctuary owner running, but Caesar's aggressive posture over his kill made intervention too dangerous. Ashley was gone within minutes. Emergency responders arrived within half an hour, but there was nothing they could do. The investigation revealed the facility had been operating without proper permits and insurance, violating numerous state regulations. Caesar was relocated to an accredited sanctuary with proper containment. Ashley's death devastated her family and led her university to implement enhanced safety education for students traveling during breaks. The incident led to stricter regulations for private exotic animal facilities in Oklahoma and enhanced enforcement of existing safety laws. Another case, equally tragic, occurred on May 21, 2018, in Grand Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. A small expedition of 4 had finished dinner beside a dying fire, and they left one storage bag unsealed near the cooking area. Giovanni Russo, 38, had worked those slopes for over a decade. A certified alpine guide, he and his wife Elena led small trekking tours for tourists seeking an authentic mountain experience. Giovanni was known as practical and even-keeled, someone who knew when to turn back and when to press on. He'd grown up in Aosta and spent most of his adult life navigating the same valleys where his father once herded sheep. The Gran Paradiso region had become a renewed focal point for conservation. Wolves had returned after decades of absence, a fact Giovanni respected but didn't fear. He saw himself as part of that balance between humans and wildlife. The couple's guiding company specialized in remote routes with minimal disturbance, and Giovanni often told clients that predators avoided people. The trek that weekend was routine, a mild ascent, and one night at a designated campsite near the meadow of Almany. His clients, a pair of middle-aged hikers from Milan, had little experience in backcountry settings but trusted the couple completely. That night, one of them had left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, and scraps from dinner were tossed into the same area. Wolves in this region averaged between 60 and 70 pounds with lean gray coats blending into the forest. Normally nocturnal, they hunted red deer and chamois in coordinated packs. But in recent years, rangers had observed bolder juveniles venturing closer to human camps, especially when food waste was left accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Elena woke to soft rustling, first near the cooking area, then a faint growl, low and uncertain. She thought it was a fox at first until she saw several silhouettes clustered around the fire pit where the unsealed food bag now lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who unzipped his sleeping bag and grabbed his flashlight. He stepped outside alone, the cold air hitting his face as he walked 10, maybe 50 feet toward the food zone. The beam of his flashlight caught 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm on the ground. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands as he took another step forward, closing the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm in a defensive snap. Giovanni jerked back, but the younger one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue near the carotid and vertebral area when he twisted to pull free, a rare but catastrophic injury. He fell backward, blood pulsing through his injuries. The wolves held their ground, uncertain now, circling the dropped food bag. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I've seen the aftermath of these encounters. It's never pretty. In 2016, a family's trip to Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal became a nightmare. The park, a UNESCO site, is a vast mangrove delta where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal, a place of stunning beauty and hidden dangers. Saltwater crocodiles, venomous snakes, and most notably, Bengal tigers call this place home. The Lawson family arrived on July 15th, eager to explore this unique ecosystem. Genevieve Lawson, a real estate agent, booked the most expensive tour, but her demanding nature quickly became apparent. She constantly berated Ravi, their local guide, dismissing safety warnings as mere fear-mongering. Her husband, David, tried to mediate, but Genevieve was determined to get the authentic jungle photographs she desired. The Sundarbans are home to the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and known to hunt humans in water. These magnificent cats can weigh up to 400 pounds and Mia over 10 feet long, armed with 4-inch canine teeth capable of inflicting fatal wounds in seconds. Their orange and black stripes provide perfect camouflage in the mangrove's shadows. During the afternoon tour, Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks near a narrow channel. He immediately cut the engine and warned everyone to remain silent, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through. But Genevieve, frustrated by the distance, ignored his warnings and stepped into the chest-deep water, camera held high, determined to get closer. Unbeknownst to them, a 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting nearby, detecting their boat's engine. These tigers are ambush predators, using water to silently approach their prey. This particular tiger had killed humans before and recognized the sounds of someone entering his territory. He slipped into the water, swimming toward Genevieve, with only his eyes and nose visible. As Genevieve photographed the tiger tracks, she remained completely unaware of the approaching danger. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, propelling itself with deadly precision. The attack was sudden and violent. The tiger surfaced behind Genevieve, clamping its jaws around her throat. Its 4-inch canine teeth punctured her neck, crushing her windpipe with immense force. The tiger's signature killing technique involved suffocating prey by crushing the throat, and Genevieve's airway collapsed instantly. The tiger's forelimbs wrapped around her torso, while its hind legs found purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip, pulling her backward into the deeper water. I find myself haunted by the thought of Genevieve succumbing to a tiger's attack in the mangroves, crushed windpipe, severed arteries, the water closing over her. It was November 15, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. Snow fell, a silent shroud over the usual sounds. A forestry worker named Nikolai Baranov, 52 years old, had been patrolling the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains. He monitored traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. a solitary figure in a small settlement near Dalner. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve, following reports of wolves closing in on villages. He rode out on his snowmobile before dawn, a canvas bag with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. His colleagues said he preferred working alone. He claimed a second engine just scared off the wildlife. His assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had become increasingly active, driven from higher ground by a collapse in wild boar numbers. These wolves could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, hunger pushing them across the frozen ground. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. But in the hard months of winter, when prey vanished beneath ice and snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. Even a faint, unfamiliar human scent could trigger the same ancient reflex to follow, test, and close the distance. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk, warnings Nikolai heard that morning but didn't heed. He checked his flare gun but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted, snow gusting and visibility dropping. His supervisor tried to reach him by radio, but there was no answer, likely due to battery failure in the cold. When evening came and Nikolai hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m., a flashlight mounted on his snowmobile and a sidearm holstered under his coat. The tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight still faintly glowing. The scene showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgen later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. Closer inspection revealed a snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down, wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals: 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalner for examination. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae, consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Then, the scene shifts. June 14, 2015. The Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, was settling into another warm summer evening. There's something both terrifying and awe-inspiring about an animal that has remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. The American alligator, perfectly adapted as an ambush hunter, truly earns its place as an apex predator. Adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds, their jaws capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. They are opportunistic feeders, consuming anything they can overpower: birds, fish, mammals, and, on occasion, humans who venture too close. I remember reading a story some years ago about a man named Walt who'd moved to Florida after selling his plumbing business. He was drawn by the promise of year-round golf, fishing, and outdoor living, things that had been impossible during Ohio's harsh winters. He bought a modest ranch home with direct water access, complete with a private dock. Fishing and feeding the ducks became part of his evening routine. The Sunset Lakes community where he lived had been built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers had created an elaborate system of retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater. These waterways were connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, creating corridors for wildlife. Heavy rains had raised water levels, bringing increased wildlife activity. Walt had noticed more alligators, but, like many Florida residents, he'd learned to coexist with them. Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently created a reliable food source that attracted waterfowl from throughout the area. One evening, he was relaxing on his patio when he noticed his favorite fishing lure was tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a long-handled net to free the lure. He'd done this many times without incident, confident that the shallow water was safe. The attack came from directly beneath him. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, exploded upward with devastating force. The reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg, fracturing his femur and severing major arteries with bone-crushing power. The alligator immediately initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining his grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal. The alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of his wife's call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had attracted the alligator, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. His death prompted immediate changes to the community's water safety protocols, including warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. Then there was Michael Chen. It was September 8, 2014. The vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun, teeming with wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with airboat tours carrying tourists deep into alligator territory. Michael, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was visiting Florida as part of a cross-country road trip to celebrate a recent promotion. He had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest. His engineering background gave him confidence in analyzing risks, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach to problem solving had made him successful in his career, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess dangerous situations. He enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family and friends. That afternoon, Michael joined a small group airboat tour, promising close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep their hands inside the boat at all times. I've always been fascinated by the raw power of apex predators, those creatures perfectly sculpted by evolution. Alligators, for example, are ambush hunters exquisitely adapted to their aquatic environments. Adult males can reach 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Their jaw muscles are capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. They can launch themselves partially out of the water with explosive force, viewing any movement near their territory as either prey or a threat. I remember reading once about a tragic incident during an airboat tour. It highlights just how quickly things can turn deadly when humans and these powerful creatures interact. The tour had been progressing smoothly for almost an hour when the guide pointed out a massive alligator sunning itself on a mud bank, only about 20 feet away. The reptile was truly impressive, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds, its prehistoric form perfectly still in the afternoon heat. One of the passengers, a man named Michael, began taking pictures, eager to capture images of such a magnificent animal to show his colleagues back home. But his enthusiasm got the better of him, and he leaned too far over the boat's edge to get a better shot. Then the unthinkable happened. His phone slipped from his hand and began falling toward the dark water. Without a moment's hesitation, Michael lunged forward, reaching desperately to catch his phone before it disappeared into the swamp. That sudden movement triggered the alligator's attack response. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mud bank with terrifying speed, its powerful tail propelling it through the water like a missile aimed directly at Michael. Its massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. The 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat as the alligator maintained its grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating hold. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma and ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased. The alligator dragged his body into deeper water where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and the deadly consequences of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It's a stark reminder that even in seemingly controlled environments, the wild remains wild, and respect for nature's power is paramount. Then, on July 8, 2017, in the sweltering Detroit summer heat, Maria Santos was loading her car with dog food and water. At 28, she dedicated 5 years to walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she found herself spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals that most people had given up on. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals, never knowing human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending their territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others, but Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance. But tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim street light like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to circle. I've seen what generations of predatory instinct can create. It's a chilling thing to witness, even secondhand. These aren't pets gone bad. They are wild animals that have learned to see humans as threats or prey. I once read about a woman named Maria who made a fatal mistake. She stepped in to break up a dog fight and triggered a pack's instinct, leading to a horrifying attack. The dogs, 6 in total, moved with a coordinated purpose that spoke to years of urban survival. When 2 smaller dogs began fighting over food, Maria stepped forward. That's when Alpha's pack instincts took over. He didn't see the woman who had been feeding them. He saw competition. He launched himself at her, his 80 pounds slamming into her chest, driving her backward onto the broken concrete. His jaws clamped down on her left arm, teeth puncturing her jacket and the flesh beneath. Within seconds, the other dogs joined, their pack mentality overriding any memory of Maria's kindness. The scarred pit bull grabbed her right leg, his powerful jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. The 2 smaller dogs went for her torso, tearing through clothing and skin. Her screams echoed through the abandoned neighborhood, but there was no one left to hear them. The houses had been empty for years, their windows boarded up. She fought desperately, but 6 dogs working in coordination were too much for any human to handle. The pack dragged her deeper into the lot, away from any possibility of rescue. Maria's movements grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll. The dogs showed no signs of stopping, their feeding frenzy triggered by blood and the thrill of a successful hunt. By the time they finally backed away, Maria lay motionless among the weeds and debris. Her body was discovered the next morning by urban explorers. It took 3 days to capture all 6 dogs using tranquilizer guns and cage traps. The pack was euthanized within hours, their wild nature making rehabilitation impossible. Then there was Kendra Sullivan. It was September 8, 2015, when she arrived at the Ngamba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria. The sanctuary served as a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees, providing a semi-natural environment where these intelligent primates could live in social groups. Kendra, a 35-year-old wildlife photographer from Portland, had been commissioned by a wildlife magazine to document rehabilitation work with rescued chimpanzees. Her best friend, Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, had accompanied her to capture behind-the-scenes footage. Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew increasingly concerned as Kendra dismissed his safety briefings and demanded access to restricted maintenance areas for better photographs. Peter Sally, a caretaker, repeatedly warned about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals, but Kendra brushed off his concerns. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the illegal pet trade. Despite their rehabilitation, These animals retained all the instincts and physical capabilities of their wild counterparts, making them extremely dangerous when encountered without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are among the most powerful primates on Earth, possessing strength approximately 5 times greater than that of an adult human. Adult males can weigh up to 150 pounds and stand over 4 feet tall, with massive chest muscles and arms capable of exerting tremendous force. Their hands possess grip strength exceeding 2,300 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bones with ease. Most notably, chimpanzees possess large canine teeth over 2 inches long, designed for both defense and establishing dominance. During the afternoon tour, Kendra became increasingly frustrated with the viewing restrictions that prevented her from capturing authentic behavioral documentation. She had specifically requested access to maintenance areas where staff entered the enclose for cleaning and medical care. Dr. Mukasa repeatedly explained that these areas were strictly off-limits due to the extreme danger posed by direct contact with the chimpanzees. While the group was observing chimpanzees in a distant enclave, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor that provided direct access to the animal's living area. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away from the group and entered the restricted zone, believing her experience with domestic animals had prepared her for any situation. The maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Bozo, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult who had been rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Bozo had shown aggressive tendencies toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals in the facility. The powerful chimpanzee was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are highly territorial animals that view unfamiliar humans as potential threats. Bozo immediately became agitated by Kendra's intrusion into what he considered his territory. When she approached the barrier and raised her camera to photograph him, Bozo interpreted this action as a direct challenge to his dominance. The powerful primate's response was immediate and devastating. Bozo lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and one detail always haunts me. They instinctively target the face, the hands, the most vulnerable parts of us. In one case, I remember, a chimpanzee named Bozo attacked a woman, and the force he exerted was mead at 300 pounds per square inch, immediately fracturing the bones in her forearm. He pulled her against the barrier, and with canine teeth over 2 inches long, he tore into her face and neck. His hands ripped at her clothing, his feet kicked violently. For nearly 2 minutes, this went on. Bozo's jaws crushed facial bones, tore away skin and muscle, severed major blood vessels. Her attempts to defend herself were futile. Several fingers were crushed. The attack was so coordinated, escape was impossible. Someone finally used high-press water hoses to drive Bozo away, but by then she had suffered catastrophic injuries. She died from blood loss and trauma before emergency services could even reach her. The investigation, as they always do in these cases, focused on security failures. Then, reading about a completely different incident, I was struck by how quickly a seemingly ordinary day in the wilderness can turn into a nightmare. It was February 9th, 2014, near Lange, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered through the boreal forest as two men set out on what seemed like a routine trip. David Laszlo, a part-time wildlife photographer, and his cousin Jeff often explored the woods together. They'd grown up hunting and fishing, but no longer carried firearms. They were heading out to check some cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They knew there were wolves in the area, but believed they avoided humans. The plan was simple: a 2-hour snowmobile ride, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. The wolves in that region were typically gray, thick-coated animals, averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in packs, relying on coordination and patience. Under normal circumstances, they avoided people, focusing on deer and moose. The men dressed warmly, carried a single red flare for safety, and by 9:30 a.m. they parked their snowmobile and began walking the last half-mile through the snow. Everything seemed normal at first. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff slipped on the ice. David crouched to help him up. That's when they noticed movement among the trees. Animals stood still, their eyes reflecting the light. Jeff shouted, waving his arms, but the wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half-buried in the snow nearby, a cached carcass the wolves were guarding. The pack was food-stressed, defending their kill. They began to fan out slowly, forming a semicircle. David tried to reason his cousin that they were just curious, that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning their backs. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then, the first lunge came, a gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto David's leg. The impact sent him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, fumbling with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, swinging it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed, but the others held their ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've spent a lifetime trying to understand how the wild world intersects with our own, and sometimes those intersections are tragically violent. I remember reading one report where wolf tracks surrounded a site in a broad ring, drag marks leading back toward the tree line and a deer carcass. It painted a grim picture in my mind. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Jeff had been swinging a burning flare, trying to keep the wolves at bay, but his cousin's wound was too deep. Within a minute, the movement stopped. He used his phone to call for help, the signal faint and intermittent, barely reaching a nearby ranger station. When authorities arrived some 40 minutes later by snowmobile, They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. The area was closed within the hour by provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents. Samples were taken from the bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting. But the distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Then there's the story from December 9th, 2018. The hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete, balancing academics with athletics. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista so desirable. He often used the informal trails and vacant lots as shortcuts, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity after a series of devastating wildfires. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and moved quickly, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. They are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80-pound juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80-pound mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae. His bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've seen what wildfires can do, how they displace creatures, forcing them into desperate acts. It reminds me of a case from some years ago. Kevin, he was the victim of a mountain lion, driven from its territory. The mountain lion fled when the emergency responders arrived, the bright lights and sirens scaring it back into the chaparral. Kevin was airlifted to a trauma center, but he died during emergency surgery from massive blood loss and spinal injuries. The investigation revealed that the juvenile mountain lion had been displaced by recent wildfires, just trying to find a new home in the residential area. Wildlife officers tracked it down and euthanized it the next day, deciding its aggression made relocation impossible. Kevin's death led the city to fence off vacant lots in hillside communities and create new wildlife management protocols for areas where urban development meets natural habitat. The Canyon Vista community put in motion sensor lighting along trails, emergency communication systems, and mandatory wildlife awareness training for residents. Kevin's family even started a memorial foundation to support wildlife safety education and habitat preservation, all to reduce these human-wildlife conflicts. It was November 3, 2015, when another kind of tragedy unfolded. This one occurred on the sprawling 300 acres of the Lonier Exotic Ranch, out in East Texas. It was a place where wealthy clients paid a lot of money for photo sessions with dangerous predators. This private facility operated in the shadows, offering interactions that accredited zoos would never allow. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the custom-built enclose housing tigers, lions, and other big cats acquired through, shall we say, questionable channels. Brandon Walsh, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had heard about the ranch through word of mouth. He was passionate about fitness and adventure, always looking for new challenges. He'd saved for months to afford this experience, seeing it as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. Brandon had built his personal training business through dedication, helping clients overcome fears and achieve their fitness goals. His confident personality and fearless approach had made him popular, perhaps a little too overconfident in his ability to handle any situation. That afternoon, Brandon paid the ranch's fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger who'd been hand-raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, agreed to supervise, but stressed the extreme dangers. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators. Adult females can weigh up to 350 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts, no matter how much human contact they have. These are solitary, territorial animals that can become extremely aggressive when their space is violated. Their jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session started with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure, taking dramatic shots of himself near the tiger with the safety barrier between them. But Brandon soon grew frustrated, feeling he needed closer contact for the photos he wanted. He convinced the ranch owner to let him get closer to Sasha, arguing that his physical conditioning and confident energy would keep the tiger calm. Against his better judgment and safety protocols, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area next to Sasha's main enclosure. This holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach of the massive predator. Brandon began posing for his camera, which was on a tripod, set to take photos automatically. His fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and reaching his hand toward Sasha, believing his confidence would show his dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened slightly, and her tail began twitching faster. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved to adjust his pose, the tiger's hunting instincts kicked in. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power. Her paws struck the chain-link fence, and her claws found purchase on Brandon's extended arm. The tiger's strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, her jaws snapping at him through the fencing. Her claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes, while her grip prevented him from pulling away. The ranch owner rushed to help, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha and make her release Brandon. But the tiger's claws had already done too much damage to Brandon's arm and shoulder, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack. His physical conditioning was useless against injuries that no human could. I've seen firsthand what happens when the lines between wild and domestic blur, often with tragic consequences. Consider the story of Brandon, a fitness model who died during a photo shoot with a tiger named Sasha. It's a stark reminder that wild animals are never truly tame, and the pursuit of the perfect image can come at a terrible price. His death sent shockwaves through the fitness community, prompting enhanced safety education about the dangers of using wild animals as props for photography. Now let me tell you about Tommy Rodriguez. It was August 19, 2013. And the Missouri heat was heavy over his remote property, a place where the stench of neglect seemed to cling to everything. Tommy, at 45, had been running puppy mills for over a decade, but financial press forced him to cut corners, and those corners would ultimately cost him his life. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels in converted sheds, housing nearly 80 dogs in various states of breeding and neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them at high prices to unsuspecting buyers who never saw the awful conditions. But the real money, I learned, came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive dogs patrolled the perimeter, 2 cane corsos weighing over 120 pounds each, and 2 mastiff mixes tipping the scales at nearly 140 pounds. These weren't pets or breeding stock. They were weapons, acquired from a defunct fighting operation and trained to be aggressive. The financial press that would lead to Tommy's death had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eaten into his profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations had forced him to operate more carefully, but he'd been cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat to maintain their strength, had been reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. What Tommy didn't understand was that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. The 4 animals that had once been content to patrol were now viewing everything on the property, including Tommy himself, as potential competition for scarce resources. The dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks. They'd begun fighting among themselves over food, marking territory more aggressively and showing less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized these warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds of the property, checking on breeding females and the security systems. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod for moving aggressive animals, but his attention was focused on financial calculations rather than the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days. Not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, ensuring their compliance before entering their territory. But financial stress and exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence, his massive head lowered in a hunting posture that Tommy should have recognized as a threat. Behind him came the others: Titan, the second cane corso, Rex, a 140-pound mastiff mix, and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told the story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his massive jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. Titan went for the torso, his teeth tearing through clothing and flesh with mechanical efficiency. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat, his fighting experience evident in his tactical approach. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, with the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. By the time the dogs, Tommy's story is a grim reminder that nature, even when manipulated, has its own brutal logic. His body, I read, remained undiscovered for 3 weeks, becoming sustenance for the very animals he sought to control. The guard dogs, their hunger driving them, consumed his remains. The scene discovered by the authorities was one of almost unbelievable horror. Tommy's remains were scattered. Dozens of dogs lay dead or dying in makeshift kennels. The surviving guard dogs, deemed too aggressive, were shot on sight. The investigation revealed a web of cruelty. Breeding females in terrible conditions, puppies succumbing to disease, and financial records showing the sale of sick animals across state lines. In the end, the surviving dogs were euthanized, a final act of mercy in a situation born of greed. Tommy's death, as I reflect on it, marked the end of a large puppy mill in Missouri, but at a terrible cost. The animals he exploited became his executioners, their hunger and desperation transforming them into something monstrous. Then my research took me to Florida, to the exclusive Cypress Point community. It was August 22nd, 2014, a sweltering summer afternoon on the edge of the Everglades. This gated community, built on reclaimed wetlands, was the epitome of luxury living. A 35-year-old landscaper named Roberto Mendez was working alone, maintaining the pristine grounds. He'd built his business from the ground up, supporting his wife and 2 young children. He was known for his attention to detail and dedication. Cypress Point, I learned, had been constructed on former Everglades wetlands, with an elaborate system of decorative ponds and waterways connected to the natural environment. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife, and he typically checked water features carefully before working near them. But on this day, while trimming bushes around a pond, his hedge trimmer slipped from his hands and fell into the shallow water. He waded in to retrieve it, assuming the manicured water feature was safe. The attack came the moment Roberto's feet touched the muddy bottom. A 10-foot female alligator, perfectly camouflaged, exploded from the decorative vegetation, her jaws clamping down on Roberto's right leg. The bite fractured his tibia and fibula, severing arteries and muscle tissue. The alligator initiated her signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water, her crushing grip unrelenting. I've spent years studying apex predators, but one case in particular still haunts me. It's a stark reminder that nature operates by its own rules, regardless of our arrogance or misplaced sense of control. I'm thinking of Tara Whitfield, who arrived at the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia on March 22, 2017. The Neptune Islands, as you know, are one of the world's premier destinations for great white shark diving. These remote, rocky outcrops jut from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal-clear waters plunging to depths of over 200 feet. The nutrient-rich waters serve as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing these massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara Whitfield, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available, and almost immediately she began making unreasonable demands. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that money could buy her anything, she berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in those dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before, of course. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen attempted to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee, jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that had ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive triangular heads housing rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, who had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface. But instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen the way humans sometimes assume they can control nature, bending it to their will with money or demands. It's a dangerous game, and sometimes nature reminds us who's really in charge. I remember reading about Tara, who died within seconds from massive blood loss, traumatic shock, and the complete destruction of vital organs. She believed her money and demands could override natural predator behavior during a shark cage dive. Her entitled belief had proven fatally wrong. The investigation revealed her deliberate equipment sabotage and violation of safety protocols. Afterwards, maritime authorities implemented stricter regulations for shark cage diving operations. Her family, displaying that same attitude, filed lawsuits against the tour company. Then there was Harold Thompson. It was March 22, 2015, and the Alabama sun beat down mercilessly on his property, where barking echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres of red dirt. At 71, Hank moved slowly between the enclosures, carrying water with the confidence that came from 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife Martha had built their operation from nothing, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What had started as a hobby had grown into a modest business with 8 breeding females and 3 males, producing litters they sold across the Southeast. But age had made Hank careless about safety protocols. In his younger days, he never would have entered a kennel alone, especially with breeding males during territorial phases. He'd seen what these dogs could do, the power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks. But experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130 LB Rottweiler whose massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime with a bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes, but Hank dismissed her worries with stubborn confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning, water bowls required filling, work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, the dog's dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog. Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 lb of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless near the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, The remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. Then, there's the story from September 3rd, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But the quiet there was deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for her, "I've always been drawn to stories where humans test their limits against the wild. This one haunts me." It's a stark reminder that even meticulous preparation can't guarantee safety in the face of nature's unpredictable forces. Sarah, a seasoned hiker, embarked on a solo 2-day loop near the Tlat River in Denali. She timed it to coincide with the caribou migration, knowing wolves often trailed the herds. She wasn't reckless. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights, and she had properly filed the required permits for the Denali backcountry zones. Rangers remembered she inquired about late-season wolf movements but seemed unconcerned by reports of increased sightings near the river corridor. To Sarah, the presence of wolves, even those averaging 70 to 100 pounds and capable of incredible speed and bite force, was simply part of the environment. She respected it, but she didn't fear it. While these wolves rarely approached people, typically subsisting on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels, rangers had posted advisories about hikers being trailed at a distance, advisories Sarah likely saw. Still, she didn't change her route. Around 4 p.m., a tourist group spotted a lone figure, later confirmed to be Sarah, waving from a gravel bar. She was heading upstream toward her camp. Her final GPS coordinate was reached before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her camera showed the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the distance. Tracks indicated she left the gravel bar for higher ground, probably intending to cut inland. About half a mile from her tent, the first sign of struggle appeared. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators pieced together what happened next. The wolves, their original prey now out of sight, had diverted toward her. Sarah likely saw them and deployed her bear spray. Residue was found on nearby vegetation, but the wind shifted, causing blowback, and the spray's effect was brief, pushing the wolves back only about 20 feet. They circled again, emboldened by the fading scent. One group flanked her from behind as she retreated up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed her haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. A wolf likely lunged, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through. Another wolf attacked lower, its bite breaking the skin on her thigh. She fought back, the empty spray canister lying beside her pack. But the wolves coordinated, attacking from multiple directions. The ground was churned with soil and hair, evidence of a struggle lasting several minutes before she was forced down. Tissue marks revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, a torn sleeve recovered 20 feet away, still holding fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night. The next morning, a helicopter spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing. Her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolet pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test that escalated fatally. Because there was no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. Rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who issued a statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. The wild can be indifferent. A very different story unfolded in Florida on April 14, 2018. Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park. This vast wetland ecosystem stretches across 1.5 million acres, home to some of North America's most dangerous predators, including massive American alligators. Monica, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. She was known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, building her career on intimidation. It seemed her reputation for getting her way had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. "I've seen what an alligator can do. The crushing power, the death roll. It's something you don't forget." An encounter in Florida's Everglades National Park turned deadly when a woman named Monica ignored repeated warnings about alligators during nesting season. She even threatened legal action, claiming her rights were being violated when a guide tried to enforce safety protocols. The park ranger, Sarah Kim, also tried to warn her about the dangers, but Monica dismissed it as government overreach. This was peak alligator breeding season, when the males are at their most aggressive, defending their nesting areas. American alligators are apex predators. The adult males can reach up to 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. They possess one of the most powerful bite forces in the animal kingdom, capable of over 3,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. They have 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth, perfectly designed for gripping and crushing prey. Despite the warnings, Monica broke away from the guided tour and paddled her kayak towards a restricted lagoon, clearly marked with warning signs. She wanted to investigate some wildlife activity, believing she had the right to explore any area of the national park. What she didn't know was that this lagoon was the primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator, fiercely defending his territory. The alligator detected the vibrations from her paddle strokes almost immediately. The reptile, weighing around 800 pounds, launched itself from the water, its jaws clamping down on the front of Monica's kayak, capsizing it and throwing her into the murky water. The alligator seized her torso in its jaws, its teeth puncturing her life jacket and tearing into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite shattered ribs, punctured lungs, and severed major blood vessels. Then came the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The alligator rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its grip. This continued for over a minute, filling her punctured lungs with water and causing catastrophic internal injuries. The combination of trauma, Drowning and blood loss proved fatal within minutes. Her struggles ceased as the alligator continued its death roll, eventually releasing her lifeless body. Tommy, the tour guide, radioed for help, but it was too late. Meanwhile, on May 14, 2017, in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the day was perfect for hiking. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was on a weekend trip with her fiancé, Tom. Sarah loved nature photography, always carrying her camera to capture their adventures. Her medical background gave her a practical understanding of emergencies, but she had limited experience with dangerous wildlife. She had been hiking for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills. The mountain getaways were a welcome break from her demanding job at a busy trauma center. That afternoon, they were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they spotted something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass with no mother in sight. Sarah knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, but I've learned that a mother bear with cubs becomes exponentially more aggressive and territorial than a solitary bear. They will attack without warning to defend their young. They view any human presence as a mortal threat that must be eliminated immediately. I've read reports of their incredible strength and speed, running up to 30 mph through dense forest. In this case, a woman named Sarah started photographing bear cubs from what she thought was a safe distance. Her excitement led her to gradually move closer for better shots. Her fiancé, Tom, repeatedly urged her to maintain distance and leave the area, but she was convinced the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass as she documented their every move. The photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake, as I understand it, was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and, I can only imagine, terrifying. The 200 lb female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds. Her powerful legs propelled her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward while still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back. Her razor-sharp claws raked across Sarah's spine and shoulders while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.